Now suppose your boss looks at this and says, those legs are too big. They need to be skinnier, more bird-like. And you think about something you'd like to say to your boss, but then you remember, well, he's right or she's right. So let's edit those legs and let's make them a little skinnier, maybe a little more bird-like, as the boss said. What I just did was double-clicked on the leg left and brought it into edit mode, and you can see we're in the edit mode now, and I double-clicked then on the symbol to get into the edit mode and clicked out of it so that I could go into modifying the shape of it, and so we can get it a lot skinnier. Let's go into the sub selection tool, press A, and we can narrow that down by narrowing that, and then let's click on that and then just move it in a little more, and that should make the boss happy. Maybe take this down a little bit and narrow the feet a little bit. That looks good. And since the right leg is really an instance of the left leg, we can just double click on that and see it's already been changed. Now let's look at the whole bird, and it's been changed. I think the boss will be very happy. So now we want this bird to have some place to go. So let's go into the scene 1 and let's create a background. Now if this were going to be more complicated, we might want to create the background as a symbol like we did with the bird, but we'll go ahead and I want to show you that you can also create something inside of a main scene. So let's create a couple of more layers on there, and we'll call the first layer the sky. One of the things we can do, we can either create a sky or we can just change the background color. So make sure you click on the stage and go to the stage in the properties panel, and we can choose a nice bluish color. That one looks pretty good. So that's our background. Suppose though, instead of using the stage for our sky background, we want to just color the background of this layer. Then we'll need to create our own swatch. So then go ahead down to one of these swatches. This gradient here should work. And then click on color. And normally in a sky wash, you want to have the darkest part to be the richest part of the color towards the top, and then the lightest part towards the bottom. And let's just adjust that so it's looks like a real wash. This is probably too dark, and so that looks like a sky from the top then towards the bottom. And let's save that to our swatches and go back to our swatches, and there it is. So we've got it selected. Now we go to the rectangle tool and click and drag it down, and then we need to rotate it. So let's make this show all, and let's press Q, select, and then let's rotate that. Let's actually back up a little bit so we can get full view of it. Command minus, and then rotate it. And we got our free transform tool, so we can shape it just about any way we want. And you can see we've got our line there that shows us where our background ends. But let's just go ahead and fill that stage, even off the stage a little bit. Make sure we've got it all covered. And that pretty much does it. Now we can go back to fit in window and click off of it, and there we have a nice wash. Actually, I'm going to make sure that covers completely. There we go. Looks pretty good. Alright, so let's go back to our timeline. And that's our sky. Let's lock the sky right now. And let's create some earth. And let's just make it a kind of a nice rolling green hill. Let's call it ground. And let's lock off the third layer now. Now it's easy enough to create a ground using the rectangle tool. Press R again and let's choose kind of a rich grassy color. Something maybe a little darker, something right around there. And let's draw that out to fill the ground. And we can modify that, put a little curve, press the V key, and curve it up a little bit, maybe to the right. Now you can follow along and do it close to the way I'm doing it, or you can do it any way you want. Now suppose we want to add some trees. Let's lock that layer, and then let's name layer 3 trees. We'll make some real simple trees. Unlock that layer. Let's use the Polystar tool for that. So go to the tools. There it is, Polystar. Let's check our options. We're at 5. Let's go with 6, just for grins. And let's give us another, maybe a darker green for the foliage, something more like that. And draw it out. And draw it out any way you want. Whatever works for you. And again, you can modify this by going into the sub-selection tool and changing things around that way. Get a little finer control over the shape of things. I'm going to bring that down a little bit. We can copy that and paste it, and we haven't changed these into symbols yet, so we can modify them any way we want. Make it look like another tree. We can even flip it, make it kind of the mirror image of the other one, make it a little bit bigger to quickly make it differentiated from the other tree. Okay, so 2 ought to be enough. Let's create a couple of trunks, and that's easy enough to do with the Polystar tool as well. But let's choose a different color, kind of a brownish color. 6 ought to be good. So let's draw it away from the foliage first, so we don't interfere with it. And let's start modifying this to make it look like a trunk. We need to add one on there. Hit plus and add another one. Sub-selection tool. Bring it down like that. Then we can continue modifying it. Plus, add another one, and add another one. Then continue modifying it. Now before we attach it to this tree with the snapping effect, let's copy it as it is and paste it for the other one, and then we can modify it to make it work well with that tree. Let's go ahead now and finish this one. Let's just take it and snap it to a couple places and make it work on this tree. Make it a little broader there on the bottom. And then this one we can flip and modify it to work with the slightly bigger tree here. Maybe make the branches that go off a little bit longer. And that'll work. Again, we're not getting real fancy here. Maybe modify this a little bit more. And let's go back to the timeline. Let's add another layer. Let's call this rock. Let's lock the trees layer. And let's create just kind of a grayish rock for the bird to take off from. Let's use the oval tool, O. Let's choose a kind of a grayish, dark grayish color, and we'll draw it out. And then we can modify it to make it work for us. Play around with it so to make it look less symmetrical. Hold down the Option key if you want to break the Bezier handles. That's looking less symmetrical. Want to have it go up above the horizon here a little bit more. Let's add some shading to that. We can go to the tools and select the line tool, which is the N for short, and we'll say that the sun is coming from the left side of the screen. Let's draw a line there and just put a little contour in it to somewhat match the side. And now we can darken that. And let's add a different kind of a pattern to this one for the stroke. Click on the stroke and then go into style, and let's kind of make that sort of grungy looking. And let's make it a little thicker too. Let's go up to 10 on that. That's looking better. So that's good on that. Let's lock the rock. And I think I'd like to add a little bit of a shading to the bird as well. So let's go into the bird's body. Let's add a line there, but first we need to go back to our hairline shape. Let's change that stroke to 3 and draw that line. Then let's add some contour to it. And let's darken that yellow a little bit. And I can darken a little bit by dragging it down some. And click OK. Click off of that, and then let's get rid of this line. Hit delete. There we go. Let's do the same for the head. Get the line tool and draw that down. Contour it. Click on there. Go back and let's do the same thing and darken it down a little bit. We could have added a swatch, but I didn't do it. There we go, that's a little darker, and then delete that. And let's go back to the whole bird, and now we got some nice shading on it. We could add shading to the rest of the body too, and I'll let you do that on your own. So let's go back to the scene and center it up, fit in the window. Only one thing really missing here, and that is some clouds. Let's add some clouds in there. Go to the timeline, let's add another layer. Let's call it clouds. Add all kinds of detail to the trees and to the rock and to the background, but I'll leave that to you to add whatever you want later on for turning in as an assignment. I just want to keep it simple so we can get through this and just get to the basics. I've already pretty much shown you what you need to do to add, lines and things like that, and shading and stuff. So let's go on and let's create and animate some clouds for the background in the sky. Go into the library and we'll create a new symbol, clouds. We'll leave it as a graphic for now. And we're going to use our Polystar tool. So let's click on that. And we want kind of a, I think rather than a black, let's use a kind of a charcoal gray for the stroke, and then we want white for the fill color. Let's start right in the middle here and let's draw it out. We're using a pentagon, and again, we can add whatever we want as far as other control points, but let's start out by adding some contour to it and some other shapes. Make it a little less symmetrical. And let's add a control point or two here. Press the plus key and add one there. Let's add one there, and maybe one more up here. And go into your subselection tool, A, and let's break these Bezier control handles. Hold down Alt Option, and let's click and drag it out, and just like I said, add some other contour here and there. And we got one here. We can Alt Option, here as well, Alt Option, and kind of just make it your own. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Back to the selection tool, V, and let's duplicate this so we have two clouds in this loop. So select the cloud, make sure you got the whole cloud including the outline, Command C, Command V, and then let's move that one over there. Zoom out, and let's flip this a couple of ways, both vertically and horizontally. Q, and flip it, maybe make it a little bit bigger just so it's not identical to the other one. and then that gives us a different looking cloud. Okay, let's go back to the timeline, and we want this to loop through, say, every 5 seconds or so. So let's go to the 5-second mark, click on it, press F5 for an empty keyframe, and let's create a motion tween. First, let's go back to the first frame and right click anywhere in that timeline and create motion tween. Now you see it automatically adds a movie clip down into the library for that animation. So let's rename that Clouds Animated. The actual animation is going to be in the cloud symbol. In our timeline, go back to the first frame and let's click inside that symbol on the stage and drag it off to screen right, because they're going to come in from screen right and go to left. So let's just kind of rough this out a little bit and take it to the last frame, and let's drag it across the screen, and you can see it's adding the motion path there for the animation. And let's scrub through and see we have our animation now. And now let's go back to scene 1, and we're going to add that animated cloud into the scene. Let's go to fit in window, and then let's zoom out once, Command minus, so that we can see everything. Okay, make sure you got your clouds layer selected, and we're going to drag the clouds graphic into the scene. It's a little bit large, so let's scale it down some. That's pretty good. Back into Select Tool, and let's run it off to the side here just so it's just peeking in right there. Now we need to add time to our timeline here in scene 1. Let's run it about 10 seconds. So let's slide the time bar out so we can see 10 seconds. Make sure you're zoomed out far enough so it's easy enough to grab. Well, one thing we do want to do is add another layer for the bird. So click on that. Let's rename this Bird Flying. And let's lock that off and go back to clouds. Alright, so at 10 seconds we have all our layers set, and just simply starting at the top, click and drag. Only click it once and then drag. Alright, press F5 for our empty keyframe, and you can see our clouds have moved to the other end. We're going to have to adjust that movement, but now we can zoom back so we can see the entire timeline. And let's go to the first frame, and let's scrub through our animation. And you can see once it disappears off the side and it comes back, obviously we need to move the clouds layer behind the trees and the ground so that it looks somewhat realistic, but on top of the sky. So now when we scrub through, it'll look proper. And pressing the return key, then you can see it loops through. And if we zoom into fit in window, then we can see how it really will look, just including this animation here. And now we need to add the bird. So lock that clouds layer, select the bird flying layer, and we're going to bring our bird in and start animating it around. So click on the whole bird in the library. Let's click and drag it into the scene. Now it's a lot bigger than we want, so let's scale it down. Q. Hold down the shift key to do it uniformly. So we'll start it off pretty small because we're going to be flying it and scaling it up. And let's put it down right on top of this rock here. And as we scrub through, you can see it's flapping its wings, but it's not going anywhere. We got to move it. So the way we do that is we can add a motion tween right there in scene 1. That'll be the only tween that we'll have actually in the scene. So anywhere on that layer, right click, create motion tween. Now it should turn blue like that. And now we can move it anywhere we want and we'll create a motion path. So let's go in 2 seconds and let's select our bird and let's bring it up. And let's scale it up a little bit uniformly, like it's coming closer to us, flying closer to us. And then let's go to 4 seconds. And let's move it forward. And you can see each time we move it, it automatically adds a keyframe to that point on the timeline. Let's scale it up again, like it's moving towards us. Even more. Let's go to frame 6 and let's move it again like it's flying down here and coming even closer to us. Then let's move it to 8 seconds. So every 2 seconds we're going to be adding another position. And let's take it over on this side and let's scale it back a little bit like it's flying away from us, all kind of hovering in different places. And then let's go to frame 10, the last frame, and let's have it fly off the screen. And let's scale it down as well. So it's scaling down and flying off into the sunset. Let's just take it right about there. Now you can see as we play through this, go to the first frame, hit return, and press V first so that we don't have the free transform. And then press return and you can watch it flying. But you can see the changes in direction are very abrupt, so we need to add some easing to that. We can do that easily by going in there. Make sure you're in the select tool, and as we go over this motion path, you can see that we get that little curve icon just like we did when we were modifying the graphics. So let's add a curve to all those areas so the changes won't be so abrupt. So let's do the first one like and you can, anywhere you have that curve, you can see that it will give you the ability to round it off. And then at the corners, then like that one, you'll see that's a right angle. That doesn't give you that same kind of curving, so you might want to mitigate that a little bit. So you got a curve here and curve here, and just play around with it. That's got a right angle, so we maybe want to round that off. And then down in this area we've got a right angle, so we might want to pull this towards it. And it's going to be flying pretty fast. So again, whatever it takes to kind of round off those corners, you just click and drag it, and then let's see what that does. press return or enter. And let's, there, see, nice and round, and he's kind of speeding up and slowing down as birds will do, but at least the corners aren't quite as sharp. And then we've got the clouds going across in the background. So let's lock off that bird, and we can publish this and make a SWF file for the video. And that's something that can be used online if we want. So the way to do that, the shortcut is Command and Return. Hold them down simultaneously, and then you can see it's exporting, and there's our movie, our SWF movie. This is obviously very simple animation and drawing, but it's a great place to start, I think. In our next tutorial, I'll be showing you how to add a scene and to have it cut to the next scene where the bird is flying in a slightly different background.